united in our desire for the same things. We want our businesses to grow, our careers to flourish, and our communities to thrive.
If something comes in his mind, he'll finish that. Till he's finished, then
share
he'll take up
exciting
more.
ideas, and discover new opportunities.
in Tokyo.
Crazy.
From India to the UK to the
So
UAE and beyond.
That's the same way as the IPL playoffs. So I won't, where there I can't compete. All I can come.
Limitless innovation.
They anyway take very good pictures. They have a
30
perfect
seconds
setup.
left on video.
Yeah.
Technology and entertainment sectors and geographies all accelerate in the
We told Drew.
industry
So there's two more couples, 5, 6 years old.
10 seconds, Ben. I think they start walking to the front.
Join the conversation at www.indiaglobal4.com.
3, 2, 1.
ASW.in.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, friends, good evening and welcome to IGF 2025. This is now our tradition, isn't it? That we gather the finest minds, the biggest thinkers, and the people who are reshaping India and its economy. And, of course, India's place in the world. And my goodness, there is a lot for us to talk about over the next couple of days. My name is Ben Thompson. I'm delighted to be with you once again here in Mumbai. Some of you may know I am a news anchor and correspondent for the BBC. And every time I come to Mumbai, I see it through very different eyes. I see the optimism, the growth, the development of this city. I see the culture, the art, and the food. I see an eye on the past and its incredible history. But I also see that focus on its future and that huge, incredible ambition. And so my job is to be your guide through the next couple of days. There is a lot for us to discuss. We have conversations, discussions, and debates. We are calling our gathering Next 25, Leading the Leap. Now, some of you will have been with us in Dubai back in November, and then also in London, of course, in the summer. But since we met here in this very room a year ago, a lot has changed in the world. And doing my job, I take huge pride in being able to explain what's happening in the world to the world. With my incredible colleagues right around the world, we try to make sense of what is happening. But lately, that has been harder than ever to do. It feels like so much just doesn't make sense. The feeling that so much is changing, but changing all too quickly. And it's maybe easy to think, isn't it, perhaps, that amid all that change, that sheltering from the storm, protecting what you have, being smaller, shrinking back a little bit, might be a way to protect yourself. But if I know anything about this country and the people who are here, it's about seizing the opportunities. It's about looking at what that change and upheaval may present. And that's why the theme of our gathering this year is about being bigger, about being bolder, and about being better. And it is, of course, why India is predicted to be the second largest economy in the world by the year 2050. And so let us assess where there are risks, where there are opportunities, and crucially, I think right now, we'll look at where there is hope. So a very warm welcome to you all to IGF 2025. And so this last week, my goodness, has been interesting, hasn't it? A fundamental rewriting of the rules of global trade by the president of the world's largest economy. As the global landscape grows increasingly unpredictable, it's shaped by so many factors, but things like rising protectionism, power rivalry, the realignment of crucial trade priorities. Things like foreign policy, economic diplomacy are entering a new, unheard of era. And so, how may we respond to this? What would a response look like? And where are the opportunities? And so in our first session this evening, I want to look at how two big players in the global economy may respond. They are India and Australia. I want to ask how they are navigating this crisis. And I want to see whether there are opportunities. Ask the question about whether old alliances are still fit for purpose, and what role those countries and their economies may play in a world of shifting tariffs and economic nationalism. And so let's get to our first session. Please put your hands together to welcome Dr. Vijay Chattopadhyay, who's in charge of Foreign Affairs Department at the BJP. Welcome. And also His Excellency Philip Green, the High Commissioner at the Australian High Commission in New Delhi. Please, gentlemen, take a seat. Welcome to you both. Thank you for being here on what is quite possibly a era-defining week. There is so much for us to talk about, and I know it will shape so many of the conversations that we're going to have in this room over the next 48 hours. But Dr. Vijay, let me start with you first of all. And how would you assess, do you think, what has happened in this last week?
It's not very difficult to understand the complexity and the severity of what's happening. I guess the globalization, which we all understand in the last 10, 15 years, is now getting reshaped and redefined, and every player who is excessively exposed to the global trade will have some impact. India fortunately has a very good domestic market, but it will still get impacted. But overall, I guess the entire global economy is in flux, and we have to just watch for a few
Put some extra time on the clock because Piyush is running late, Ben.
And what would, let's talk, I want to focus on some of the positives that may come out of this and what some of the opportunities may be, but I think we should talk fundamentally about what the risks are first of all. And as you said, it's still so much for us to determine. A lot of this is not yet clear. Where do you see the risks for India?
Of course, the sectors which are dependent on the exports, especially to US, and we have a large exposure to the same, will have something to worry about. Still, some sectors are not that much impacted, especially like pharma, but there is also news that they will also face the tariff. So, I think it is still uncertain, and we need to assess the severity of the total impact.
Philip Green, we should say there's a caveat in all of quite how much detail you can get into because our elections are looming on it.
Thank you very much, Ben. We're in the so-called caretaker period. So,
yes, so that's established. I want to ask you the same question I asked Dr. Vijay. That, how would you assess what has gone on this week? How fundamental is this?
Oh, well, look, let's think about the world before this week, which was challenged. We're living through a period in our region, the Indo-Pacific, of unprecedented superpower rivalry, a highly contested region where we need to pay much more attention to security and the attendant economic security that goes along with that. And at the same time, we're dealing with a world which is engaged in, a world which experiences two major conflicts. One in Eastern Europe and one in the Middle East. So a lot of work for diplomats to do. In relation to Mr. Trump's decision on tariffs, I mean, this was unsurprising. Mr. Trump has made clear he's going to do things differently. Every US president does. And each of us will have to work out how we manage that. Now, for Australia, first thing to say is the United States is our unparalleled strategic partner and a very important economic partner. The United States is the cornerstone of our security. And at a time of greater contestation in the Indo-Pacific, engagement with the United States and drawing them closer in the way in which we seek to find a balance in our region is more important than ever. The second thing to say is that the decision of Mr. Trump on tariffs is, as I said, not so surprising, but in Australia's case it is unwarranted. We have a free trade agreement with the United States. The United States has had a surplus of trade with us for every year since 1952. At the moment, that surplus is 2-to-1 in the favour of the United States. Yeah. Every good that enters Australia from the United States enters at zero tariff. We will be working constructively with our friends in the United States. 10% is at the low end. but for us it's too high.
Yeah.
And we will be working with all of the agency that we can muster to convince our friends in the United States that it is in their interests as well as ours to have that number lowered.
And given that it doesn't seem to be based on the economic fundamentals, all those fundamentals of trade, this tells us that this is about politics. This isn't about economics. This isn't about trade. This is about pure politics, isn't it?
Oh, well, Mr. Trump has identified the reasons for what he's doing, and as I said, they're not surprising. He enjoys considerable support in the United States.
And he flagged it on the campaign trail.
We need to manage that new reality. We need to work with it and work with the grain of our important ally in ensuring that we find a better way in the future.
I want to come on to some of that diplomacy that may go on, because you touched on that. But Dr. Vijay, let me ask you about what the response may look like. And, you know, so India is sitting here working out what that number means, what sectors are particularly affected. What is the diplomacy that now goes on? How does India, how do countries around the world, how do they respond to this?
I think, as my friend has said, India is also very actively engaged with US right now.
Yeah.
I don't have, I am not privy to the details, and maybe in the next session we will hear it. But I think as a friend we will be able to find some solution and common ground over a period of time.
I mean, because the phrase that kind of echoes around all these negotiations are that, you know, this is not the behaviour of a friend or an ally. This is not a country that wants to do trade when, you know, they're prepared to put up trade blocks in such a way. Does the rest of the world need to sort of put that aside and think, well, that's, you know, this has been established now.
I think
we need to respond in whatever way.
Every country will have to find out its own way, because he is not treating every country with the same scale. So for India, Indians will have to find out its own solution for enhancing the bilateral trade with US, and same thing with Australia. And there cannot be a common solution.
So Philip, what is that diplomacy? What does that look like? I mean, is this just, you know, joining the queue at the White House for a meeting with Mr. Trump?
Oh, well, it will be comprehensive, and it will begin with our leaders, and where, you know, a very good relationship has been struck up between Prime Minister Albanese and also with members of the opposition currently in Australia. And Mr. Trump works through our embassy in Washington. I mean, this is what diplomats are for, isn't it? We are creating mechanisms to engage so that when there are points at which we differ, we can find mutually agreed solutions. That's what diplomacy is about.
What might that solution be?
Oh, well, for Australia, it's very clear. You know, although a 10% tariff is at the low end of what has happened globally, we think it's too high. And, you know, we think it's appropriate if tariffs are going to be reciprocal, our tariffs are zero. So that's the outcome that we seek.
I mean, what strikes me about both India and Australia here, you know, so many similarities in terms of that trade relationship that these countries have with the United States, but very different economic domestic fundamentals. And I wonder in India's case as well, is there an argument here that with, you know, such a huge growing population, with a huge domestic population to serve, that India might think actually, well, yes, of course the US is a huge part of our trade picture. But we're in a really fortunate position that we've got a huge growing domestic market that we can service better, and maybe there's a bit more inward looking.
Yeah, but in addition to the domestic, we also have very good bilateral partnership with many countries, including bilateral agreement with Australia, with UAE. So we need to foster these agreements with
Ben, please check the timer.
With UK. So opportunities are there outside USA also, but they cannot be displaced with not talking to US.
It's so interesting, and you know, the fundamentals are really different. And I wonder in Australia's case as well, you know, China, utterly the focus of everything that we've seen out of the White House lately in terms of, you know, trying to redress that trade imbalance, according to Mr. Trump. Is there a danger Australia gets caught in the crossfire? Because clearly a really important trading partner for both, but particularly geographically where you are.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, you know, we have an important relationship with China, and we cooperate with China where we can. We disagree where we must, and we always act in Australia's national interests with our partners and colleagues. We've been through a period of considerable difficulty in our relationship with China, and we've come out the other side of that. Yeah. So, I mean, that is working on a separate track to the way in which we engage with the United States.
Dr. Vijay, do you think we are in a period now where we have to make our peace with the fact that the days of fully, open, be it in whatever respect, the way that global trade has worked for the past, several decades is over? That this is a new beginning, and that therefore, once we've all accepted that this is a new start, we can start rebuilding what it looks like?
I think it is too early to make such a bold statement. The indicators are in the same, what you are saying, in the same direction, but at the same time, yet full picture is yet to come up. So we'll have to just wait and watch and be prepared.
What does that preparation look like then?
Now, as I said, that more bilateral engagements and also enhancing the domestic consumption can be some of the tips.
I mean, is there an element just here, Philip, about holding one's nerve? If you look at what's happening in the stock markets right now, I mean, the message is hold your nerve, is a great buying opportunity. That aside, when it comes to the diplomacy as well, is this about just holding your nerve? Who blinks first?
Well, let me come back to your previous question that Vijay answered well, but let me add something to this. We all benefit from free and open trade. And my country is a great example of that, where over the last 2 generations, we've benefited hugely from opening our markets and allowing our comparative advantages to prevail and other countries' comparative advantages to prevail as well. We also benefit from a system of rules in relation to trade that are predictable and allow transparency and allow traders to go about their natural business. Those realities, those verities have not changed. And so Australia will always be an advocate for a continued system of reliable, predictable, fair trading environment.
But essentially dealing with someone who's not prepared to play by those rules. I mean, that's where the playing field has changed, isn't it?
Oh, well, the trading arrangements that we've got have had headwinds in the past, and they will have headwinds in the future. What I can tell you, Ben, is that Australia will always be a supporter of free and open trade.
And I assume that's also true of India.
Absolutely.
But I wonder, in the short term, how, given what's happening, I mean, is there a way that India can say, actually, we're prepared to sort of sideline the US here because we have so much else that we have to deal with? Or will it always remain that fundamental part, whatever the terms may be?
No, we cannot say that we can sideline US. It's too important a country for us. I guess there will be some middle way to come to a conclusion in the near future.
Our time is up. We're going to rattle through our conversations tonight. It's really just a way for us to set the stage for so many of the discussions we will have in various rooms around this venue over the next sort of 24, 48 hours. But ladies and gents, please put your hands together for Dr. Vijay Chhatwale and also His Excellency Philip Green. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Thanks, Philip.
Cheers.
So, of course, we are here, and none of this would be possible. All the debates and conversations we will have over the next 24 hours will not be possible without our sponsors. So here is a word from one of them.
25 years ago, Edelweiss started with a vision of not doing things the same old way. Over the years, we have explored all things investment and have become better at it every year. We started off with investment banking and soon made our way to institutional equities and wealth management. Now, with strong institutional ownership of PAG as a promoter, we have grown to become a comprehensive wealth and asset management platform, also offering capital market solutions. And our fresh new perspective on wealth is reflected in our new brand identity. Nuvama is a unique brand name that brings together new perspective and prosperity, something we have always strived for. Today, we are one of the top wealth management companies in India and the company with a comprehensive wealth management platform, employing over 2,700 plus people across 450 plus locations with a network of more than 23,000 plus partners. With significant client assets, Nuvama is the established player with proven execution across HNI and UHNI client segments. Nuvama also has 1 million customers comprising people, businesses and institutions, including ultra-high net worth families. While all these numbers are very gratifying, at Nuvama, nothing gives us more pride than the relationships we build with our clients and how we obsess over even the smallest of their needs. We believe in only doing what is best for them and their money, and we can back it up with our expertise, experience, and innovative solutions. The next step in our evolution will be driven by technology that will help us understand and use investment trends. At Nuvama, we believe in creating a culture that nurtures growth and learning, something that promotes leadership and an entrepreneurial spirit in everyone. We inculcate values of commitment to the client, clarity, reliability, and a desire to disrupt the status quo. Everything we have achieved so far, our vision and our values are all driven by one mantra: to do it right for our customers. Nuvama, let's do it right. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
So our thanks to Nuvama and our other sponsors and partners who are making today and tomorrow happen. So our thanks to them. Now, we're going to jump through quite a lot of topics tonight because there's so much to set the scene for our discussions. And we know that artificial intelligence, automation, one of the huge challenges and opportunities that is reshaping business too. It does, of course, bring pretty clear benefits, but there are concerns as well, not least about its impact on things like jobs, but creativity and strategic thinking too. So in our next session, I want us to look at where that push for automation and that demand for AI could leave that dynamic between humans and machines. Where can and should the technology excel, and where should we rely still on humans and the instincts that are so irreplaceable? So to help me discuss that, please welcome to the stage Oriane Cohen, who's the founder of OC Strategic Advisory, and Saket Agarwal, who's the founder and chief executive of Innovation Ventures. Please welcome them. Nice to see you both. Thank you. Grab a seat. As I said, a warning to everyone, we are going to rattle through these because there's a lot for us to talk about. But welcome to you both. Delighted to have you here. And Saket, let me start with you because I'm right in saying, and you might need to explain this for the room if people aren't familiar with what you do, but you've basically built a business that will identify right around the world stuff that's really disruptive. And then you brought it to India and said, how can that solve some of India's problems? Is that a fair assessment of what you do?
Absolutely.
And so therefore, my first question, what are you looking at? How do you find this stuff?
Yeah, I think I had a very stereotypical life. I grew up in Calcutta, Marwadi family, did CA and CS. And one day I realized I don't enjoy accounting. And I went on looking for what would be the next big thing to do. And luckily, I met this guy from the Israeli consulate, saw they have amazing tech, but they don't come to India. They go to the US to expand. And that's why it was more like a curiosity that kind of lit up. And I said, why don't I make a trip and see if I could solve anything that Israel has to offer? And that curiosity clubbed with sheer grit to make it happen kind of got me started.
And that's about looking at new tech. Fundamentally, is it's
Yes.
using that technology to solve some of the problems. Then, Oriane, I'll bring you in a sec, just because we need to make sure that the human element, is front and center in that. What sort of tech are you looking at, and what sort of problems are you trying to solve?
So we identify the best of cloud, data, and cybersecurity companies and bring them into India. So, for example, all of you would have heard of this company called Wiz, which just got acquired by Google for $32 billion, and we brought them here. But essentially, if you look at tech, with AI, a lot has changed. There was a segment which was going after, more old school way of doing things, and companies like Wiz, which scaled from 0 to 500 million in, 5 years, they're solving things very differently. And it's actually us humans who have to understand that there's a new way of solving problems. How do you identify that early and become the first user is what I'm trying to solve for.
And Oriane, what I'm really interested in here is that there is such a push and there's such a focus on being able to use tech to solve problems. Is there a danger we forget about humans in all of this?
I don't think we can forget about humans at all. I think that there is a big confusion as well in what AI actually brings to the world. I think we confuse the fact that AI cannot really think. We think that AI can think, it can analyze, it can reason, but it doesn't have emotion, it doesn't feel, it doesn't have any sensory cues. And in my field, human intelligence, in the sense of gathering intelligence from human sources, we feel things. It's about feeling the body, it's about reading micro-expressions, body language, and so on. And AI can only simulate and mimic. We've seen some examples, and I use AI a lot, and I'm very glad about it, and I think that's very important to master it as well. But for instance, I can see that sometimes my AI is trying to be empathetic with me, like trying to be nice to me, but it's just mimicking, basically, and simulating an emotion because it's used to me being maybe emotional. And I think this is very fundamental to still understand. AI has no emotion, doesn't feel, and it just connects the dots very, very clearly in a sense that it's like deep learning. With all the data that you feed him with, it connects the dots. But our human intelligence and our brain not only connect the dot with the data, but also with experiences, our trauma, the things that we lived when we were kids or in the last negotiation that we feel pressured. And all of this, our brain is much complex than AI.
And I suppose that's the point, isn't it? That, a lot of what humans do, we take for granted. The reading between the lines, the body language, the nuance, the empathy. Is that the problem, that we just take it for granted? We assume it's always going to be there?
I don't think that's a problem. To me, these things are just complementary. The real problem is that AI is not supposed to take decisions. Decisions is something that decision makers actually should make. And it's the result of a thinking process that involves choice, emotions, and a lot of complex processes, interpersonal dynamics. We were talking about diplomacy just earlier. We tend to forget that it's still people doing business, somehow connecting. And even in diplomacy, the human part is very important. And AI cannot reproduce that, but the problem is we are the human behind AI. We are feeding AI with our biases, our cognitive problems, our emotions. So I think we should implement some protocols for the engineers and the teams that are behind AI, behind the language, the models of language, to also really to do psychological profiling of these guys, make sure they don't introduce their bias, and make sure AI at no point will be able to take decisions. That's very important. And that's the huge danger, the inherent danger to AI.
Sakit, when you're making, when you're doing your research, you're bringing these organizations to India, how do you get that balance right? Where does the human element fit into what you do? And how do you make sure you've got, the right mix of technology to solve problems and human traits?
I think the right mix is all about I'm also an investor in several SaaS companies, and one of the things more so important if you look at is, are you really solving a deep enough problem which is relevant to a larger audience, and more so becomes harder in the current world, because today there is a company solving for financial fraud using AI and goes to a 0 to 100 million ARR in 6 months. Then suddenly there's a new company that comes which is built a much disruptive technology to do it in a better way, right? So I think it's becoming harder and harder to identify what's a good technology that would solve a problem, but ultimately we all go back to the human that is building it, right? Can the founder who's building that company is able to evolve faster, the first company? And I think that's the real call to take when you're identifying a technology or a company.
And Orion, you talked there about who is feeding this, who is training these models, who is, what is the human element? And I wonder, as humans, we are inherently flawed.
Yeah.
Should we be building in flaws to the technology? I mean, because I was interested in your point about, your AI is mimicking empathy. Mm-hmm. Does it matter if it's mimicking it? It's still being empathetic, isn't it? Does it matter that it's a copy? I mean, what is real empathy?
Oh, real empathy, that's a huge subject, a big human subject. That's a problem that it's mimicking empathy, because it feeds us then in exchange. It's a relationship that we're developing with AI that becomes toxic, and I think also at some point it may lead to the degenerescence of AI, because AI now is creating a lot of content. Also, something that I want to emphasize, let's not forget, AI is producing a language. It's not really producing knowledge. It's producing a language on the basis of the data that we feed him with. But slowly now, we can find a lot of articles written with AI on Google, and he will use this to feed himself that has been written by himself, or itself, actually. Yep. I've been gendering AI, which is also an interesting bias, actually. That's the danger, and we should not fall into these things and believe that AI is a tool. I always say it's like a knife. A knife is the greatest tool for a butcher to cut the best meat in the world, but it can be also a weapon to kill. Every tool has, a double-edged perspective.
And Sakit, you said it's getting harder and harder to find these opportunities, to find these solutions. And I wonder whether we're going to get to a stage, maybe pretty soon, maybe we're there already, whereby the human abilities, the human skills actually become, take on a new value. We see them in a new light, because there's such a push and a race to automation and AI and technology that actually we're saying being human is pretty valuable too.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing that also I keep reflecting on a daily basis. I think, first of all, we can take Taylor Swift's example. That's my favorite example. There's a lot of AI now in the music. You can create a song on your own life and, make it a really popular one. But people still go to the stadiums to listen to her, because Taylor Swift has emotions. She can make you cry. AI has not had a heartbreak or fallen in love, but Taylor Swift has. And that's why the stadiums are always sold out, right? So I think the human element will always remain, but I want to make a deeper point. I think as humans, we need to think about not surviving, but thriving. We have to not just skill ourselves on AI, but really do it very, very fast. And one of the things we do at our company is, I was inspired by the show called Billions. If you've seen it, it's about a high-performing hedge fund with a lot of pressure. And they have a character called Wendy Rhodes, who's a life coach. Her only job is to make everyone perform at their highest potential. So I was inspired, and we got one for our own company, for myself and then my whole team. And one of the things it does is it helps you unleash everyone to do what they are doing best. So you can strengthen your strength. And then weakness part is anyway going to get automated by AI. So that's my general thesis.
Orion, a final thought from you before our time is up. But there's so much concern, isn't there, around the use of AI. You're really optimistic, though, aren't you, about the role that humans will play in it and the way that we will embrace AI?
Yeah, because I think, first of all, I am an optimistic person, and we need that in our world.
We do
so I think that's very important. But again, my expertise at the end of the day is human intelligence, so that's my main focus. And I want to master AI, so it won't master me. But I put a huge emphasis on human intelligence, on human relations. And I think Sakit, I wanted to tell you, I think he is like one of the greatest case study about what human intelligence is in business, because it's basically connecting two nations. It means he has emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, the capacity to understand two different nations, and he's making a connection between people. that maybe if they were meeting together, they wouldn't fit, but with the intermediary of Saket, so they can actually meet. He knows the flows, he knows how to communicate with them, communication style and all of these things. He can feel, I guess, the emotions, the fear, the problems, and that's human intelligence, that's negotiations, that's diplomacy, and that's business. We are making, I've seen cases of like contracts where you can have the best figures, the best contract on paper, they sign, but if it wasn't a human match in the beginning, at the end of the day, it's going to be a disaster. And it's not going to work.
There we will leave it, but thank you to you both, to Saket and to Oriane. My thanks. And a reminder, of course, these are just a little snapshot, a shop window on the interests, the abilities, the skills of our speakers. So do find them after over a drink or a little bit of food later. But Saket, Oriane, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move quickly on, but just a little word, because we are back here at the Geo Convention Centre. It is a beautiful venue. I'm always staggered every time we come in here. I don't know if you saw these incredible flowers downstairs a little earlier. They were pretty wow. But of course, they are a key partner for why we're able to put this event on here. So here's a word from Geo Convention Centre. No wonder this place needs to be big with all the stuff they've got to fit in there for those events. Now, we have talked, haven't we, so far this evening about trade, diplomacy, tech, AI. Now I want us to look particularly at skills and the next generation of people who will reshape the economy here in India. Who are those people who will reshape its future? The bold ideas, the hard lessons, and everything in between. I want us to talk about the next generation crew who will rewrite India's story. And so I'm going to hand you over to Dhruv Goyal, who's the Chief Executive of 4 Lion Capital, and his panel. Please welcome him.
I think I'll ask each one to come up individually as I introduce them. So maybe I'll start. Firstly, thank you very much for giving us the time and the platform to discuss not just what's happening in India, but what's happening in the world. Did something major happen over the last 72 hours? I don't know, there's some scared faces in the audience. But I can't think of a better group of individuals to dissect what's happened in the last 72 hours and where we are going than the group that's going to follow. So I'll introduce them in descending order of age, even though Vaman looks like he's 25. Vaman, why don't you come up first? Come. Vaman is vice chairman of the Motherson Group, which is one of the world's largest auto parts and auto components manufacturer in the world. And when I thought about introducing each one of them, not only are they dear friends, but I also wanted to highlight one incredible accomplishment of each one of them as I introduce them. And what's amazing about Vaman is he's used the legacy Motherson Sumi brand and the production capability to now become one of Apple's biggest suppliers. So that diversification into becoming a supplier to the EMS ecosystem is quite remarkable. And I'm very excited to hear from him as, Motherson sells in about 44 different countries in the world. So he's actually cracked the India to the world story. So very, very excited and very grateful to have you. Next, I think in age, we have Harsh. So come on, Harsh. He's the star of everyday IPL games. Come. He needs no introduction. He's running Dream 11 that hooks about 20 crore people onto their platform every evening, particularly during this 2-month period. He's built something truly remarkable. It's a startup that the whole country is extremely proud of. He's the poster child of entrepreneurship in the country, despite coming from a distinguished family and a family that's done incredible work in the old economy. So it's great to have Harsh on as well. I think Jay, you're next. Please welcome him. Jay runs Kotak's 811 business. So, now that he's come without a tie, it's very clear that he's on the fintech side of Kotak Bank. And so a bank that, we all know very, very well, but he spearheaded Kotak's entry into fintech, its ability to open accounts in a digital fashion. And he has a bird's eye view of what's happening in the economy when it comes to the health of the consumer, loans, both secured and unsecured, and very excited to hear from him as we go through the conversation as well. And last but certainly not the least, Parth, please come up on. If I had to list all of Parth's positions within the JSW group, our full 35-40 minutes will go just in that. But Parth is, running a bunch of different businesses within JSW. What's remarkable about Parth's work is the nuances with which he can speak about the auto sector, the cement industry, sports in our country. I mean, JSW, in my opinion, has done more for non-cricket sports in our country than any other organization that I can think about. And, it's remarkable what he's done. He's been leading their cements effort, which is going to go public later this year. And so we're very, very lucky to have him on this panel as well. So we've really got a remarkable group of folks and wanted to start by introducing everyone. So let's give them all a big round of applause. So let's start with the beginning. Vaman, why don't you tell us about what it was like to get started? What was the first job within the organization? Where did your father kind of send you? What was his first mandate to you?
Well, thanks for having me. Now I need to jog my memory because he says I'm the oldest here, the most ancient, so I need to think about that for a second. But look, when I started, for me it was very simple. I graduated in 2008. Kind of feels similar to today.
Right, maybe.
Yeah. So really didn't have much of a choice. I was in New York, right at the epicenter of the Lehman crisis, and it was an opportunity of a lifetime because a lot of the auto components were going down. Auto companies themselves were filing for bankruptcy. And we had this huge opportunity to acquire a company that we had been in joint venture with for 18 years, but we were 1% of their global sales. So we were literally a small speck in the entire thing, but they were owned by hedge funds, and we were asked by the customer to take it over. And overnight, from being an Indian company, we became a multinational, and it was the size of our group. And I remember very clearly because I just graduated from my MBA degree, and I looked at the debt on this company, some 330 million euros, and I tried to convert it into rupees, and my pocket calculator came up with an error because there were that many zeros in there. But that was the start. I think my father just pushed me into the deep end, and it was very much swim or sink, and our whole group was on the line. And that was my real MBA. So I think those kind of experiences really teach you what's necessary in the world. And I'm grateful for that experience because till you don't go to the edge, you don't really know what you're made of. So very grateful for that time. I had a great team to make that a success. But yeah, I think all these moments that we are talking about now, these are defining moments, and people who see the opportunity in these situations are the ones that are going to really define what the future is like.
Very interesting. Harsh, do you want to tell us what it was like to convince a old economy family business that you want to start this new tech platform to convince people to get into the fantasy cricket world?
I'm still working on it. But yeah, it wasn't easy convincing. My dad comes from like real estate and finance, right? And then imagine a 21, 22-year-old kid coming and saying, you know what, I'm going to start a website and I'm going to, I need like 10 crore to get the business up and running, which is like 50 crore maybe today. This is 18 years ago. And not just that, when my dad asked me, what's your business model? I said, well, my business model is that we're going to let everyone play for free and then give prizes. And the conversation was just dead silence. He's like, no, how do you make money? And I was like, when millions of them come, we'll show ads, right? And that conversation didn't go well. And he was right. And we tried that for a few years and burnt through all of it. And then pivoted to a freemium model after 5 years of pain and suffering. And that started working. And then when it started working, we took another 5 years to get to profitability. And then once we got there, then my dad was like, okay, now this is a business. So today he at least, now he's
acknowledges
like, okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
No, he's been always been my biggest critic, but now he's also my biggest advisor and the one I pay the least, 0.
No, that's wonderful. Jay, after you graduated HPS, how did you think about what was the first role within Kotak that would make sense, and how did you stumble upon 811 and built it into the franchise that it is today?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I started my career at Kotak. I started my career before the MBA, but as far as Kotak is concerned, in the investment bank doing transaction advisory, M&A buyback, stuff like that, which was great fun. I moved to the consumer side a couple of years later, and I felt that was a very transformational period for fintech and technology in India, while also feeling that banks need to do a much better job than they did in terms of how we serve our customers. So 811 was born on 8th November 2017. 811, which
2016.
8th November 2016. Dhruv knows my history better than me. As the date.
What happened on that day, Jay?
A small event. Some of you may have heard about it. It's called demonetization, and it profoundly changed India. That came along with the tailwind of UPI, tailwinds of every Indian having a cheap smartphone, every Indian having high-speed data, and then a couple of years later, the shock of COVID that did what the other things couldn't do, which is changing the mindset of Indians away from touching currency to transacting digitally. So it's been 7.5 years with the bank and around 5 years with 811. It's been a great ride.
You know, I had the great privilege of visiting Jay's office, and I couldn't believe that 811 and the way he's set it up could exist within an old school bank the way Kotak is, in that it felt like a tech company, you know, all the open floor office space and everything. So it's really remarkable that he's been able to build that within such a large kind of legacy organization. Parth, do you want to tell us about how you've navigated things? You know, before Parth talks about his experiences, I must highlight, you should watch his interviews from Davos this year. It's quite remarkable that he can go into the nuances of EV batteries and still elevate the conversation back up to cement pricing and IPOs and that kind of stuff. So the breadth of your knowledge is quite amazing. So tell us about your start. Where did Mr. Jindal kind of put you first, and how did you work your way up the organization?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me, Dhruv. No, for me, I think when I came back from the US in 2012 from undergrad, I worked for a year in New York and Tokyo, and then I was part of a team of JSW Steel that actually went to Japan to learn about making auto-grade steel, because back in 2013, India didn't have a single factory that could make auto-grade steel. So that was my first experience back in the business. And when I came back, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had a choice of either entering one of the two publicly listed entities of JSW, which was either the steel business or the energy business, or look at some of the private companies within the JSW group. And I actually stumbled upon 3 of our loss-making businesses. We had a cement business at the time, which we were about to sell to CRH. We have a US steel business, which was losing a lot of money. And we had a small IT company. So I went to my father and I asked him that, Dad, I could shadow you or shadow anyone in the organization. They're such great people. Or I could take over these loss-making companies, and I think I could, I don't think it could get any worse. They're already losing money. So he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. They're already losing money. If you can go and turn them around, I think you'll do something good for the group, and you'll also build your own confidence and credibility. And shut down the IT business very quickly, realized that we are a manufacturing group who knows how to manufacture in India, so we should stay focused on that. And now I look after our cement business, started a paints company, gotten into automobiles, and obviously the passion is truly sports, and the US steel business with everything that's going on. There's only, I think, very few people who smile when they hear about tariffs. When you're a producer of steel in the US, you definitely smile when you hear about tariffs.
Speaking of tariffs, I think this couldn't be the most perfect segue into that, particularly because your group is unique in that you obviously, produce a lot of steel domestically, have those steel plants in the US as well. But on the auto sector, as an example, dramatic reductions in tariffs could be very harmful to the domestic automakers. And if you take the Jindal group, it competes with the world's steel providers, but at the same time cooperates with a Chinese auto company, as an example, MG being that company. So how do you view this tension around tariffs? Is it, what kind of opportunity do you think the last 72 hours has created for India?
I think on the tariff side, I think we have to recognize that India is a developing country, and here cost is king. And in order to scale in India, you need to have the right cost economics. Now, if a US automaker wants to come into India, please allow, I would request and I would urge the government to please allow them to come into India without any tariff, because I can tell you for sure they cannot compete in terms of cost.
Right.
And the cost of labor itself is so high over there that I don't think they can compete on cost, nor can they compete on technology. The situation is completely different when you look at China. China is the world leader in terms of technology for EVs, for PHEVs, and China is the world leader when it comes to cost as well. And if India truly wants to electrify its automobile industry and truly wants to become self-reliant, because today India has enough coal to make energy, India has enough solar power, India has enough wind, India has enough access to water. So there is no reason why India should be importing, millions and millions and millions of barrels of oil in order to fuel our motorways and fuel our cars, trucks, buses, two-wheelers, everything. So I think that's where we draw the line, that we say, okay, if we can bring in the right technology from China, there's absolutely no harm in doing that, as long as you're bringing in technology and you're not bringing in finished products from any country. So that's the way we view the world, whereas in steel and in many other industries, the Chinese have always looked at India or looked at the world as a dumping ground. They need to employ their people in China, and for them employment is much more important than profits, and as a result they make other economies reliant on their product, and as soon as the domestic industry shuts down, they jack up the prices. And we've seen that in a bunch of industries across the world, and as a result we need to protect those critical industries as long as we are competitive. At the same time, cooperate with them where their technology is the leader in the world, so that we can bring the cost down in India. And that's how we view the world and view how we need to deal with China or the US or any other country.
What has been a big impediment to breaking the cost curve in the auto sector? Is it just the batteries, the fact that we have to import the batteries?
Yeah, I think importing the cells and having the technology to manufacture the lithium-ion cells is truly, the knowledge that so far we don't have in India. You have it in, few countries in the world only, Japan being one, Korea being one, but China is by far and above the leader in terms of that technology. People are now trying to bring that technology into India with collaborations with Chinese companies, and I think that is the way and that is the future.
I see. Very interesting. Jay, you get a bird's eye view on the health of the Indian consumer. There's been a lot of debate about reasons for the slowdown in the Indian consumer over the last fiscal year. Any thoughts on what's happening there and where you see the Indian consumer and the health of their balance sheets over the next, call it, year or two?
So two things. One, we're still at $2,500 per capita GDP, which means that on a relative basis, we have to do not that much right in order to do better. And I think we are doing a lot right, so we start from a low base. Second, if you compare us to other countries around the world in the, say, $2,000 to $5,000 per capita GDP framework, our macroeconomic situation is far better. We have extremely high foreign exchange reserves as a share of our imports. We have relatively low household balance sheet leverage. If you think about the unsecured and credit card leverage as a share of US household versus India, India is in much better shape, and we have prudent recent regulation to not let that kind of spiral out of control. And thirdly, and most importantly, we have prudent government spending. India has consistently over the last many years run a quite pragmatic fiscal deficit. Our public debt to GDP is in 2 digits. Most developing countries are not. So I think we're in reasonable shape. That said, that old adage, when the US sneezes, the world catches a cold, very much applies. We should be humble enough to acknowledge that and be careful given everything else I've said.
No, very fair comment. Mr. Kotak recently tweeted around the unit economics of deposits. Any thoughts on that? Why have customers stopped depositing money into banks? Is it just the equity markets that's been pulling a lot of that deposit flow in?
So two things. One on the business model of banking. Banks at the end of the day are transferring capital from those with surplus to capital with those in need, and the spread in the middle is is your profit, out of which you take the fixed cost. The cost of capital for most banks is some portion low-cost deposits and some portion term deposits and market borrowing. Over the last 3 or 4 years, low-cost deposits, certainly the last 2 years, low-cost deposits have not grown very much, which means the entire funding for most banks in India is coming from fixed deposits and bank CDs, which is effectively borrowing at rates ranging from 7.5% to 9%. So let's say if your average incremental or marginal borrowing cost is 8.5%, banks are still issuing home loans at 8 to 8.5. Banks are still issuing corporate loans to blue chip companies like JSW at 9.5, lower, somewhere thereabouts.
Otherwise, they'll go and borrow abroad.
Otherwise, they'll go and borrow abroad cheaper.
Right.
So you then have this situation where your marginal cost of funds is equal or lower than your marginal lending.
Right.
And that is not a great situation to be unless you can solve for the low-cost deposits. What's happening is that investments has become a large source of where deposit money would go, which is fine, but some of it, one could argue, has a slightly speculative nature. And gold and real estate continue, gold particularly over the last few years has continued to be a store of value. So there are challenges to the banking business model in India.
Very interesting. Harsh, moving on to you. I've always been fascinated by the operations of Dream 11 during this 2-month period. You probably go through incredible spikes in server usage at about 7 or 6:30 p.m.,
Yep.
right? Maybe even a little sooner than that.
7:05 to 7:30.
7:05 to 7:30, right?
Yeah.
And managing through those spikes in server volumes, etc., must be an incredibly difficult challenge. So would love to understand or take us behind the scenes of what Dream 11, the product, looks like when 20 crore Indians are trying to sign in at the same time and put in a 50 or 100 rupee into the platform. So walk us through the innovation around that. And then more broadly, just talk about how Indian businesses are navigating through innovation as an idea and as a concept. It's been vociferously debated over the last 24 to 72 hours. So would just love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. But it's actually, so what happens is, for all those that don't know, our fantasy sports platform allows people to come and make their own teams for a given match, and based on how you perform, how your team performs, your chosen players perform, in the real life match, you get points in the game. And so today, Mumbai Indians is playing RCB in Bhankade, right here. And so at 7:05 p.m. for the 7:30 match, lineups are out. The toss happens, and then the captains say who's playing and who's not playing. At which point, chaos descends on our systems. With we're almost 25 crore users now, who then jump in to either make their teams or change their teams based on, today Bumrah's back. So you can imagine that the happiness of all the Mumbai Indians fans, the sadness of all the RCB fans, but also every single user saying, I need Bumrah in my team.
Absolutely.
And so everyone jumps in. Yeah. Even the RCB fans will take Bumrah in their team.
Of course.
So everyone jumps in, which is when, it just goes crazy. And so what happens is that this year, in fact, we clocked 16.5 million concurrent users, which means that on our app, at a single second, like a microsecond, there was 16.5 million people who clicked a button at the same time. And all of them need to be processed within that second. To give you context, some of you may know like a game called Fortnite, which is one of the world's most popular games. They have a peak concurrency of 14.5, 15 million. Ours is higher.
It's higher than that.
This is some of the highest, one of the most technically challenging problems in the world. In fact, it is so technically challenging that Amazon, AWS, we're one of the largest customers.
Right.
And we've helped them build out some of the services specifically for this.
Wow.
To a point where they've invited us, and we're one of the 25 companies who sit on AWS's global board.
Oh, wow.
Which advises them on the kind of things that they need to build out for the whole, globe. And so, talking about the tech innovation, there truly is tech innovation because India is, the adage again, India is not for beginners.
Yeah.
Right? But that also applies for people who think that, okay, yes, we have microtransactions. So, the average user plays for less than 50 rupees on our portal, on our app. But there's 25 crore users, right? So like UPI has allowed us to build unbelievable fintech in India. And even though the transaction sizes are low, the scale is so ginormous that the amount of technological innovation that's gone into our systems, into UPI, is the best in the world. And so I can tell you that there's a lot of technological innovation going on, but I also agree with the last 72 hours what's been said. I just think that give us a few years. Once there's enough tech companies in India make enough money and free cash flows that we can then reinvest into deep R&D, we will outpace even China and USA, right? Because the domestic market is just that large. With what you said about 2,500, per capita GDP, we will literally in the next 5 years, 10 years, have about 300 million people come into disposable income for the first time.
Incredible.
Which will be unbelievable.
And do you want to maybe just talk about how it has worked in the West with deep tech kind of spending? Some of the large hyperscalers and their ability to channel some of that free cash flow into that innovation?
Yeah, look, today we don't have a single tech startup that has $1 billion of EBITDA.
Right.
Right? And in the West, we've had Amazon, which was doing e-commerce. Meta, which was doing social network. We've even had in China Tencent, which was doing gaming, and Baidu and Alibaba and all of them. They've all been doing the same things we are doing in India right now. But then they had a decade or more of tens of billions of dollars of free cash flow, which today they're now harvested and putting into investing into R&D, deep R&D. Because in India, if you start putting $1 billion into R&D, the next year someone's going to come and say, "Acha, now we have to make revenues of this," right? And then suddenly you take a different path. But the only way you can do what the West does, which is say that here's a $100 billion check, and in 5 years we'll figure out how to monetize it.
Right.
We'll get there. So the sentiment that was spoken about recently is correct. It's just a timing issue.
Very well said. Vaman, you run a very interesting company that has 85% of its revenue outside of India, which is very rare for Indian businesses. Most of our companies tend to be very domestically focused given the size of the market. So in some ways, Motherson Sumi has really cracked the ability to sell to the world and be an integral part of those auto supply chains. What have you learned over the course of this journey, and what lessons do you have for the rest of corporate India as it looks to sell beyond just the domestic market?
Yeah, we've been lucky because up till this EV boom came up, you could count the auto guys on your hands, right? So for us, the strategy for success was just really follow your customer, because an Audi in Germany or Audi in Mexico or Audi in India, you expect to have the same level of car no matter where you buy that car. So for us, it was very important to really step up that level of quality, that level of delivery to world standard. And if you look at that, there are very few industries in India that have had that opportunity to compete for global quality. There's no way Daimler would accept a car that's substandard or Toyota or anything for that matter. So I think that was our let's say our advantage, because we were already put into such a high rigidity of level of quality to be delivered, that we could take that discipline and take it to other countries. Parth was talking about Japan. Our first joint venture was Sumitomo. We learned so much from them.
Right.
So taking that learning, we have more than 40 joint ventures. So we have some of the best, practices that people are doing, globally. Taking that and combining it in a mother-son way, creating a mother-son DNA, and taking that to any country, and if you follow operational excellence, financial discipline, you can be successful. And for us, like I said, we're serving the OEMs. So as long as you are following exactly what they need, you follow your customer. Like we've done 45 plus acquisitions now. All of them have been at the behest of the customer. We don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, today let's go attack this company or that company. It's all the customers saying, hey, you did a great job with the wiring harness. Now look at mirrors. Now look at this. Now look at that. And we've taken that platform and we've now pivoted it not just to auto component, but engineering, manufacturing, and assembly. And we are diversifying. We're into aerospace, consumer electronics, logistics, medical equipment. And we found that this manufacturing piece still has to be done. We can talk about AI, we can talk about a lot of these things, but the hardcore manufacturing still has to be done.
Yeah.
And that requires a deep focus of people being able to come together and to be able to do it. Yes, you can use technology, you can use tools, you need the financial markets to help you do all of that. But the key strength is like people learning, adapting, and putting that into place. And in manufacturing, process is everything. So once you get that right, you can really take it anywhere.
And how were you able to mold your manufacturing processes to even crack Apple? I mean, that's a difficult supply chain to be part of.
I can't comment on any customer. But I can just tell you, in the Motherson side, we are being looked at as a company that has successfully taken manufacturing out of India and been able to be successful globally. So when people look at us or companies come to us, they're like, look, these guys do millions of cars. I mean, if you look at in the automotive side, if there is a recall or product recall, the impact is very, very large. So the quality systems are very, very deep. And cars are like, we're talking millions, right? 85 million cars are produced every year. So for the other industries, this is a very attractive place to get discipline, to get proper processes, and we know how to scale. So some of the largest factories that are coming up for us now are maybe, let's say, the largest factory we put up right now is the size of 33 football fields.
Wow.
Here in India.
Unbelievable.
So the size and scale is now ramping up, and if you've had that discipline to do it in the smaller size, it's much easier to then take it to a bigger scale. So yeah, I think that will continue, and we're very excited about bringing manufacturing into India that we have relied on importing a lot of that. Now we're wanting to do that in India.
Superb. One of the things that I think about a lot is all 5 of us on this stage have been extremely lucky in having just in some ways won a genetic lottery and being born to folks that we idolize and have really given us a great platform to thrive. Would love to ask about social initiatives within your group, within your company, separately within your family office or otherwise, whether it's in sports or just even just more broadly. We live in a country today that still has roughly 900 million people that live on roughly $3 a day. And so, it is incumbent on us to give back some of the prosperity that we've both inherited and built. And so would love to understand what each of you on this panel are doing from a social perspective as well to give back to this country that we love so much. Maybe Vaman, you want to start and then we can go from there?
Yeah, look, from our side, we want to do manufacturing and we want people to do it. So for us, Motherson has never shut down a factory. We will keep the factory running, and that's why we set up plants where people don't want to set up, in high-cost countries, and we have to figure out a way to make it successful. So our idea has never been to do labor arbitrage and to bring jobs back. We have to be locally successful and locally competitive. And for that, you have to use tools like, AI tools and more efficiency and better automation and all those things that you need to use. But for us, our purpose in life is to make sure that all the factories run, we continue to grow, we're a growing organization, and more people can be employed doing those jobs. In fact, if I just take a quick second, automation is talking about replacing people. Some of the cheapest people in the factory are the ones that are working on the line. Why would you want to replace them? You should be replacing more, some of the indirect overheads, which is a lot more, and giving these people an opportunity to rise. So that's how we look at it, a little bit different. But yeah, our job is to secure jobs and continue to grow and bring more people into the organization.
Superb. So corporate with a real social purpose as well. Harsh?
Yeah, so obviously we are looking at sports, and so we run Dream Sports Foundation.
Excellent.
Dream Sports Foundation has about 8,000 athletes that we take care of in India. They've won about 300 medals. It's only 4 years or 5 years old, and we won about 300 medals for India. 3 of our athletes even went to the Paris Olympics, which we're very proud of. But I think going forward, more of our focus is going to be on 2 things. Is on grassroots. Grassroots sports is, I think, the most underrated part of what we need to work on, because everyone wants to work on elite athletes, right? Once you have like a Neeraj Chopra, which came out from actually Part stables, that horse is a stallion, right? Now, once you have that, obviously everyone wants to associate with Neeraj Chopra, right? But how are we going to create the next 100 Neeraj Chopras? Right? We need a bench strength, and we need that entire ecosystem. So that's what we are trying to work on more. We also want to work on across sports. Look, cricket is amazing. Cricket's doing great. It's our religion in India. But we really need to work on kabaddi, football, basketball, hockey. We really have to get that diversity of sports back into India. So that's what our foundation focuses a lot on. On the personal front, I actually love dogs, and my wife is a doctor and loves working with kids, and so we run a foundation called Raksha.
Excellent.
Which has centers in Mumbai for animals and for impoverished kids.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Jay? 2 parts to my answer. One, I think India has an extremely progressive CSR law that ensures that all companies put a part of their profit into CSR, and that's very necessary to kind of drive that behavior. But more fundamentally, I believe passionately that CSR and what's good for business are usually the same thing, particularly if you want to make it scalable. If you think there's Coke available in Afghanistan, all around the poorest countries in the world, you'll see used Toyotas. That's all part of the free market system of companies that make outstanding products at lower prices. In India, you think about companies like Parle-G. You think about the sachet products, companies like Unilever.
Yeah.
This is how you scale to bottom of the pyramid. It's by building and maybe this is controversial, building for-profit businesses, because then that drives everybody with the right motive. For me, 811's first ever advertisement was Ranveer Singh on a railway station, meeting people of all caste and creed across the socio-economic spectrum, and obviously by virtue of it being at a railway station, it had a point to prove. So for me, our business of providing bank accounts and financial services to every Indian is in itself, I think, both a for-profit good and a public good.
Super. Parth?
Yeah, so I think it's a broad question, but I think at JSW, like Jay mentioned, the CSR law, we have the JSW Foundation, and I think the social license to operate truly comes from the foundation. So before we go to any location, the first thing that actually starts is the CSR work. So whether it's putting up the local school, the hospital, making sure that the direct impact zone is actually taken care of, because you can't be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. You have to take care of everything that surrounds you. So we do a lot of work in our DIZs, and I think about 80% of our foundation's efforts go there towards helping the agriculture, the farmers, helping the education, the healthcare, the whole system. On a larger scale, I think we do a lot of work in sports. That's something that I'm passionate about, and I think we've spoken about earlier. But I think we also give back a lot to higher education institutes. I think for many generations, a lot of corporate India has been donating to foreign institutions. And not enough institutions have been built in our country, and we have some of the finest institutions in India. So we've given large gifts to the National Law School in Bangalore, to IIT Mumbai, to Kriya University, we've set up the JSW School of Public Policy at IIM Ahmedabad. We've done things with Anant University, and you know, we're doing work with IIT Banaras, IIT Delhi. So we're really trying to give back and create, you know, make our top institutions even stronger, because they are actually some of the brightest minds running the world today. If you look at, you just have to look at the US and see how many CEOs are actually Indian and how many of them are actually from IIT to know that, you know, the world is being run by people coming out of our institutions. And they don't get enough funding from individuals, they don't get enough funding from corporate India. So we're doing work there. And yeah, I think the CSR Act and the law of giving 2% back, you know, we were working in non-profits well before that, but to make it formal and to make it mandatory is a really great step. And that's enabling a lot of work to be done in areas like education, healthcare, sports, and others. And I think at JSW Foundation we focus on all these areas.
Superb. And you know, to your point, India still only spends about 1% of its GDP on R&D. And if you look around the world, most R&D actually happens at universities and higher level institutions like that, which is where, you know, we need to give back. We need to create that culture of philanthropy, to give back to the organizations that we've been very lucky to have gone to and at the same time support. So I think that's a great mission. And you know, as they say, there's no greater service you can do than giving someone a job. And all four of you have created lakhs of jobs in this country. So we're extremely grateful for all that you're doing, and hope to see you continue to thrive in your various respective fields. I'm being told that our time is up, so just want to give the four of them a big round of applause again for coming and sharing their insights on what was a great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the IGF Executive Circle, an exclusive global platform for ambitious leaders who value meaningful connections, real-time insights, and cross-border opportunities. Be a part of the next wave of leaders, innovators, and business pioneers leveraging India's global rise. An IGF Executive Circle membership brings with it AI-powered smart networking, exclusive masterclasses and industry insights, access to in-depth market reports and curated content, priority access to IGF events, and numerous other benefits and opportunities. Ready to lead the future? Join the IGF Executive Circle today. Sign up online at www.indiaglobalforum.com to join a vibrant and growing community of leaders and innovators.
Thank you so much for that. So many important discussions that will take place over the next couple of days. And you'll have seen there the ECM, the Executive Circle membership. You will hear much more about that in the days ahead. It really is a fascinating project, one that you will want to be part of. So thank you so much for that. Now, I'm delighted to welcome the man that makes all of this happen. He makes all of this possible. He is the one that brings us together. He's the one that keeps us talking. He is the man behind the power of this platform. He's the man behind the power of IGF. So I'm delighted to welcome the man who needs very little by way of introduction. He is the Chairman and Chief Executive of India Inc. He's Mr. Manoj Ladwa. It's all yours.
Your Excellencies, friends, just imagine a world where bold ideas are not just dreamt, they're delivered. Where boundaries blur and nations build together. Where ambitions are not limited by geography, but fueled by global connection. That's the spirit, friends, that's the spirit of leading the leap, the theme of India Global Forum here in this great city of dreams, Mumbai. But friends, I also know, given the turbulence we've seen in the markets over the past few days, this vision, this spirit may feel a little distant for many in this room. Isn't that true, Shiv? And yet, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to those who have traveled from across India, and many of you who have traveled from across the world. Your presence reminds us that at India Forum, it's not just an event. We are a movement. A movement where the spirit of global connection thrives. Whether the turbulence of the last 4 hours, 4 days, 4 months, or dare I say it, even the turbulence of the next perhaps 4 years might bring. Over the next 24 hours, we will have more than 20 dynamic sessions that will unfold across this magnificent venue. From global investment flows to technology frontiers, from energy transition to the cultural economy, shaping the new global narrative. A narrative, friends, where India does not respond to change. A narrative where India shapes the change. You'll hear from founders, investors, policymakers, and changemakers, not in silos, but in real conversation, across 4 forums that reflect the pace and pulse of this India, the new India, and the world around us. At IGF, we don't believe in monologues. We believe in meaningful engagement. Just ask our founder circle, some of them who are here this evening, some of whom also recently joined me for an intimate, in-depth dialogue with Elon Musk at Starbase in Texas, not just to explore the future of technology, but the future of humanity itself. That's the kind of access and the insight that India Global Forum enables. Not through noise, but through trust, through credibility, and the power of curated networks. So to all of our members, sponsors, speakers, delegates, and partners, just like the Geo Convention Center and the Reliance family, thank you ever so much for your support. Thank you for helping us turn bold ideas into impact. And now, friends, to take this conversation forward, I'm delighted to invite someone who doesn't just shape policy, but challenges us, occasionally provokes us to think bolder, think brighter, and to dig deeper. A politician that does provoke thought, a leader whose views spark reflection, debate, and crucially spark action. Someone who has supported India Global Forum from the start. My friend, our friend. Friends, please welcome onto the stage His Excellency, the Honourable Commerce and Industry Minister, Shri Piyush Goyal.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj, for more than generously acknowledging that I spark a lot of trolling also. Absolutely delighted to be amongst such an illustrious group of well-meaning persons who care for India, who are engaged with the India growth story, and who believe in the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a dream of 1.4 billion people to make India a prosperous nation, a developed nation by 2047. I've been a part of Manoj's events for now more than 10 years. Even before I became a minister, for that matter, even more than 11 years now. And I still remember, I was just telling Mr. Kang that one of our events where I was chief guest at the IGF in London, I was rubbing shoulders with future prime ministers. And it was truly a delight to see the traction that IGF was able to garner in UK. And I'm even more delighted that IGF has arrived in India, is helping catalyze conversations, is helping build the narrative of the India of tomorrow, and will of course provoke a lot of new ideas, new thoughts, new ways to take the India story forward. And a warm welcome to all of you from across the world, from across the nation, who have come for this two-day event here. And I hope you go back satisfied and much more knowledgeable about the India story. We stand in very difficult times. The world is going through a turbulence. I just saw a chart earlier in the day giving me the last 24 hours of stock market performance across the world. Fortunately, India was right at the bottom, some 3% down or something, compared to the chart starting from about 9% plus, or rather 9% down, to put it more correctly. So these are going to be challenging times. These are reflective of a world in turmoil which has, over the past many decades, built itself to reach this stage. Obviously, these things don't happen overnight. These things are a culmination of several factors at play. And if somebody was to ask me what would be the trigger point of where we are today, why the world is going through this churn, and what I believe, and I have been able to assess, the starting point of this actually goes back to the beginning of maybe 2000 or 3 or 4 years before that, when China was admitted as a member of the WTO. And maybe around late 90s or mid 90s when they got into conversation with the WTO. And collectively, everybody in the world accepted China as a member of the WTO. Many parts of the world were convinced that China will reform itself, China will transform its processes, will bring transparency to their economy, will work on fair terms in the global economy, and that being a large economy, an emerging economy, an economy growing by leaps and bounds, and we've seen that growth over the last 25, 30 years, almost relentless growth to become the second largest economy in the world. But what everybody closed their eyes to was that this growth was fueled by unfair trade practices. This growth happened at the cost of fair play. This growth had its foundation on every action which, in the rules of the game, would be considered improper, and the result of those actions caused a situation where I think large parts of the world got carried into the narrative of low-cost manufacturing, low-cost goods coming from one particular geography, but did not realize the long-term impact that it would have at the global stage. I've often been misunderstood for my comments on several issues. when I talk about the potential threat that countries and nations face because of predatory pricing, the nations being affected because of large subsidies, very often hidden subsidies, subsidies which never get into public domain, targeted to attack certain nations, targeted to attack certain economies. When I talk about labor practices in certain countries, when I often bring to light how there's an effort to demolish industries, one after the other, literally like a pincer attack on sectors. Very often the message gets lost in the desire to have low-cost goods serve industry or serve business or serve consumers with a very short-term myopic perspective. I think the current state of play in some way is a culmination of almost 3 decades of this attack on several economies. We in India, I remember when about 25 or 30 years ago, the first example that came to play was a watch company from Gujarat who kept pleading that unless government takes some action at that point of time, the entire watch ecosystem in the country will be lost. And because we played by the rules of the game, because India remained true to our commitments at the World Trade Organization, as did most other well-meaning countries around the world. Starting from there, one after the other, we've seen an era of unprecedented damage to national economies, to the manufacturing ecosystem in large parts of the world, loss of jobs, loss of fair economic opportunities, irrational pricing on a variety of goods, killing sector by sector the nation's self-reliance. Our pharma industry, once upon a time the pharmaceuticals used to be very much self-reliant. And the attack was just to get one sector of the value chain under your control. Moment you had that, you were able to dictate terms on that sector. Agrochemicals is going through a similar phase, even as we speak. And I think it is this recognition that the world today has to come to terms with, has to act wherever possible in a concerted manner, so that we can once again bring back fair play, bring back rules of engagement which are working towards equity, towards pricing of goods and services at honest values. And unless we bring back this balance and this order, I see the world either facing even more turbulence or the multilateral trading system coming under threat. And therefore, it's very appropriate that the India Global Forum has brought all of us together to discuss areas of mutual interest. We are all in it together. All well-meaning countries, all well-meaning businesses will have to address this challenge. And one way to really make sure that the country is prepared to meet this challenge and convert this challenge into an opportunity, into a better future for the country. Just like we converted a lot of the challenges during COVID into an opportunity. Just like in the year 99, when the world thought the sky is going to fall on their head. Remember the Y2K bug? How that converted into an opportunity for the Indian IT industry. And we never looked back from there. I think we stand at a moment in history where India is well poised to convert the current situation into an opportunity. We need to support each other. We need to have a nationalist outlook. I was at a FICCI program earlier today, and Mahatma Gandhi in 1931, while addressing the FICCI AGM, nearly 94 years ago, in 1931 had given the message that Indian industry should keep nationalism at the core of their work. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today, when he talks about nation first, when he talks about Viksit Bharat by 2047, when he focuses on inclusive and sustainable growth, when he talks about self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, when he talks about ensuring the benefits of a growing economy reaching the last man at the bottom of the pyramid, I think truly embodies that spirit, that nationalist spirit. And if Indian industry, Indian businesses join hands, support each other, work together as a team, ensure that our only criteria is not going to be a cent or 2 cents saved in our value chain, but thinking in the long run, worried that today what I am doing may come home to bite me tomorrow through my actions. If I do not support my downstream stakeholder, there may be a point of time where my upstream fellow lets me down and I need protection. And at that point of time, it may become too late. And therefore, all of us have to reflect on what our role will be, how we will move out of this protectionist framework that we have been enjoying in different sectors for far too long, how we are willing to absorb good quality as our mantra, and on the back of high quality products and services at scale. And we have the huge advantage of 1.4 billion people consumer base, the world's fastest growing economy, possibly the only economy which will grow from a $4 trillion GDP value today to a $35 trillion value in the next 2.5 decades. We have an opportunity of a lifetime, and I appeal to all of you, be a part of the solution. Be a part of this moment in history. And if each one of us seizes this moment, India is unstoppable. Thank you very much.
Piyush Goyal, thank you so much. It's such an important point, isn't it? That idea that we can all work together, and that absolutely is the reason we're all here today. Please take a seat there. And I know you're going to stick around. We're not going to let you go without talking to you about some of those issues. I'm delighted to welcome the person who will sit down and talk to you. So please put your hands together. Please welcome Haslinda Amin, Chief International Correspondent at Bloomberg Asia, to talk about some of those issues. Thank you.
Nice to talk.
Minister Goyal talked about how we're going through a very challenging time, and a lot of that right now has to do with President Trump's tariffs. He has upended global trade, imposing the biggest change we have seen in about 100 years. At the crux of it is that 10% tariffs imposed on friends and foes, and for those countries with a trade surplus with the US, they're hit even harder. India, 26%. We have China at 34%, Vietnam, 46%, and for a country like Lesotho, a small country in Africa, one of the poorest in the continent, slapped with 50%. Now, all this coming at a time when global growth is slowing, inflation remains sticky, and for India, it comes despite having made concessions to US companies like Tesla. So what gives? What does it mean for India? What does it mean for global trade, and where do we go from here? Mr. Goyal, such a pleasure to have you with us. 26% tariffs for a friend who stood by the US and possibly helped to counter China's growing dominance in the world. How do you feel about that? How does India feel about that?
I think we all know that it's a formula-based tariff. And based on that formula, friend or foe, everybody fit into that formula and had a tariff imposed on them. So it's nothing to do with the fact that we are friends. Clearly, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump are very good friends, as are the administrations of the US and India, and as are the business persons and people of the two countries. So I think let's not conflate issues. There's nothing to do with, for that matter, UK is a very good friend, US is EU is very good friends all over. But I think this is just a formula-based tariff.
So are you in conversations? Are you hoping that perhaps you'll get an exemption or perhaps a delay in the implementation?
Well, I think what we discuss in the boardroom is not discussed in a public forum.
But you are in conversations then?
That is a matter of public record. I think when the Prime Minister and President Trump met in February, they had both announced that we shall enter into discussions for a bilateral trade agreement by the fall of 25. Both countries are old friends, old allies, trusted partners. Our businesses work seamlessly with each other. India opened their arms to all the tech giants, be it Google, be it Meta. All of them were welcome in India, even when many other developed countries, and certainly China, did not allow them to operate in their countries. We have hundreds of thousands of students in the United States. We have a strategic partnership which transcends the economy. So there's lots that we are working together on. This will also be something that will add luster to our relationship.
So that trade deal is coming and you're confident it will happen by year end, including the other trade deals that you're working on, including the UK as well as Europe, which you have just indicated are friends.
You know, I'm not going to give Bloomberg a headline.
Put this in perspective for us. With what's going on right now, are we at the start of deglobalization? We've been throwing this word deglobalization for a while now.
I don't think so. I think this is re-globalization with honest terms of trade and countries which believe in the rule of law, like India, working in partnership with like nations who also would like to have an orderly framework. In the short run, there could be some turmoil, but as I mentioned earlier, India believes in converting every crisis into an opportunity.
So how do you seize the opportunities? What opportunities do you see? How does India play a bigger role in the shifting supply chains?
Ms. Amin, we are a democracy. We believe in the rule of law. There's fair play. We don't discriminate between Indian or foreign investment. All are welcome. The rules of the game are equal. Everything we do is transparent, and we have a very, very independent judiciary and ferociously ruthless media. And add to that the social media now. Unforgiving. So obviously in India, we offer a conducive environment to work with. We have the world's largest population, 1.4 billion Indians, providing demand. And that local demand itself, sometimes I often worry that the local demand is growing so rapidly and our businesses are quite comfortable to grow and meet the local demand. And despite that, we still need imports because there's so much demand in a growing, fastest growing economy, large economy in the world, that we are not focused enough on even exports, which is why I appeal that we have to leverage on all these free trade agreements. Otherwise, it's no good to do all of this.
But talk to us about how global trade will change on the back of what we're seeing right now. An environment with tariffs being imposed on all countries.
It'll be very different world. They have to figure out how it will be administered. I, for the life of me, have not yet been able to understand how they will administer. For example, I don't know if you've observed the trade deficit of the United States with Vietnam over the years. 20 years ago, it was close to zero, maybe $1 billion to $3 billion. 5 years ago, it was probably $30 billion. Or 7 years ago. During the Trump administration first term, they slapped tariffs on China. And everybody thought their trade deficit with China has come down as a result of those tariffs. What we only found was that there was a trade diversion and the deficit from Vietnam has grown by the equal amount by which the deficit fell from China. So I think we've not heard the end of the story. We still need to see how trade diversion from countries who do not believe in fair play or transparency can be safeguarded against. We in India believe very strongly that we will stick to the rules of the game, and we believe that in the long run, ethics and honesty in operations always pays off.
A country like the US says that India still practices protectionism. 17% tariffs, which is among the highest in the world. Is this an opportunity for India to rethink how it does trade and who it does trade with?
I'm on record on this on several occasions. A little bit of research would have given you that background.
Shed some light anyways.
I think our tariffs are a protection against these unfair trade practices. Or countries, let's take the RCEP region. Countries which cross-subsidize, which subsidize in one geography, move to another, and from there ship goods to a third. There are several ways which we are continuously finding. And it's like trying to remain abreast with new ways of beating the system. And a lot of our tariffs are to do with such protection against such economies. If you look at the United States, for example, while our overall tariff may be 17%, but a lot of it is products which we don't import it at all. Our applied tariff to the United States is probably 7 or 8%. It's not humongous. So really, it's a question of understanding India's tariff story. We've done an FTA with Australia a couple of years, 3 years ago, with UAE, with the 4 EFTA countries. We're in active dialogue with many other countries and group of countries. So we are a country that believes that bilaterally we can work together with countries which have fair trade practices. And then we don't need this kind of protection. Indian industry is very competent. They can beat any competition in the world if everybody sticks to the rules of the game. It's the it's the irregularities or the unfair trade practices where we need to protect through tariffs. So I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that bilaterally we have a lot of elbow room in working with developed countries and countries where we find equal opportunity to do business.
You made a lot of reference to China. Do you see that trade relationship with China evolving? I mean, if you're laying the red carpet for the likes of Tesla, why not accept a company like BYD, which is looking for a domestic partner in India to do EVs?
Well, we need to be convinced that they will work by the rules of the game, and several unfair practices which are gradually coming to light as more and more companies come to us with what's happening, the kind of dumping that's happening in steel, for example. As we understand how they are doing third country subsidization, so country A is where the subsidy is provided, whatever you know which country I'm referring to. It goes to country B in the RCEP region, where they do the requisite value addition, which becomes simpler because the basic raw material is moving at very low prices. So value addition norms are easier to meet. And that subsidized product is being dumped on other countries like us. I mean, as these practices come to light, we have to be cautious in whom we allow to invest in the country. We have to be cautious about our strategic interests, our security interests. So it's a mix of many issues before we are able to take that decision.
So it's not a definite no for BYD. It depends on whether it can convince you.
As of now, it's a no.
You talked about dumping, and I know that a lot of countries are concerned that China may be dumping more of its products, its cheap products, on countries around the region. We know that the Philippines has made reference to it, Thailand, Vietnam. With the tariffs being imposed on China by the US, do you see a lot more dumping by China to countries like India?
It's quite possible, and we will all have to be cautious. And through you and through this medium, I can request Indian industry to be on top of it, on top of what's happening in your different sectors. And please keep the government informed so that we can proactively take action. Of course, with data and solid information.
Let's talk about the Indian growth story. You made reference to it. Right now, estimated at 6.5% for the year. But with the tariffs, some say it could knock off about 1%. Is not a fair assumption?
No estimate is talking of knocking off 1%. Bear in mind, India is not an export-dependent economy. We value exports, value them immensely. We have crossed $800 billion of exports, goods and services, in the year just gone by, 31st March 25. And of course, I value our service exports as much as I value our goods export, because every country has their own USP. Michael Porter's theory of comparative advantage of nations. We may have a competitive edge over others in our services sector. We'll grow that faster. Wherever we see an opportunity, we are growing that. Having said that, the large domestic demand has kind of kept India full up, and any trade disruption or global slowing of trade or economies may really not have that large an impact on the Indian economy.
If it's not 1%, what would it be? 0.5%?
I
Less
am
than
no
that?
economist, I am no astrologer.
But if you were to hazard a guess, being a trade minister, commerce minister...
It's too early to say. Our year has just begun. We are on the 7th day of our year. On the 7th day of the year, certainly I am not competent enough to predict what the next 358 days are going to be.
How concerned are you about the volatility in the Indian rupee?
Indian?
Rupee.
I don't think it's very volatile. On the contrary, we have outperformed our peers. We perform better than most competition emerging markets. We do not interfere.
Of late, of course, we saw how the Indian rupee actually slumped to close to record levels.
The whole world's economy, currency slumped to record levels. We slumped a little less than the others. So it's an evolving situation. The uncertainty always causes distress to the currency. And from what we are seeing in the last 4 or 5 days, today probably was a reversal, but 4 or 5 days we've seen a rapid rise in the economy. Some of my exporters have been really worried. Of course, I can't do anything about it. It's market forces.
You seem pretty optimistic about the prospects for the country. What do you deem as the biggest challenge for India in the next 12, 24 months, or even 4 years I think it was mentioned that there's a lot of uncertainty in the next 4 years.
4 years is very long period. I don't think I see any kind of global disruption for such a long period.
People talk about geo-economic fragmentation, a tripolar world.
But some countries deserve to be fragmented and thrown out. So I think fair trade partners coming closer together is good for India and will help us grow faster. And we will be able to contribute to the growth of and the economies of the developed world, which is currently going through this turmoil. So we are open to do business with partners who mean well for us, as long as they also do not give us a bad deal. It has to be a win-win situation. Every relationship has to be fair, equitable, and balanced. If I find the right balance, which works for India, with my mission of India first, as should be the mission of the other country to protect their interests. I recognize and respect that. And as long as both partners respect each other's sensitivities, we can't go wrong. So I do believe that we are on a sweet spot. There could be a short-term challenge, but I think we need to stay strong. We need to believe in ourselves, and we need to have a positive mindset and trust that we are in safe hands, something which the people of India have demonstrated now for the third time by electing Prime Minister Modi back in government. They trust his leadership, and I believe they believe that the country is in safe hands.
You talk about how the country is in a sweet spot, currently about 6.5% growth. Is that the sweet spot in terms of growth for the country? Is that the sustainable growth trajectory?
You know, when Prime Minister Modi was contesting the 2014 election, 11 years ago, when he was elected to become Prime Minister, he was at a ladies' event, a FICCI Flow event, if some of you may remember. It was widely telecast all over the country. And to a similar question, he had raised his glass of water, which was half full. Mine is a little below half full. And this question, the response is like the half full glass. I think an aspirational 1.4 billion people, and Prime Minister Modi is always nudging the people of India, particularly the youth of India, to aim big, to dream big, to aspire for big things in life, not to rest on our laurels. We have a lot we can do, a lot to achieve, and collectively when 1.4 billion people make it their mission in life to make India a great country, a prosperous country, to provide for 1.4 billion people's prosperity. We are, as I said earlier, India is unstoppable.
Minister Piyush Goyal, we thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And if I could invite you to stay in the seats as we have a thank you address right now.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank Honorable Minister Goyal sir for such an optimistic, inspiring, and insightful talk. And in the same breath, as he talked about the youth of India, I would like to compliment Goyal Jr., Dhruv, and his wonderful panelists for giving us such an insightful session as well. These are indeed uncertain times, and in such uncertain times, policy making with so many input variables moving with such velocity becomes very difficult. And in that note, it is very refreshing to see such clarity of thought, sir, that our leaders are inspiring us and they're thinking of turning every opportunity, every crisis into an opportunity, if I must say so. You rightly echoed the sentiment that the start of this decade saw the first reset in the global world order. We saw COVID, and I think India navigated that best to its advantage. We had the entire world talking about the anti-China theme, and India turned that into a China Plus theme, and we can see what transpired over the next 3-4 years in India. And I think the current crisis seems an opportunity, and if we all echo your sentiment today, that this is the crisis that can provide us the next leap of growth. And thanks to IGF and the team, they've rightly named it India Next 25. And I think with the strong fundamentals and the growth trajectory that India is on, this can truly be the Viksit Bharat turning moment if we can turn this crisis into the opportunity that the world deserves. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I would like to thank Manoj and the IGF platform for bringing such wonderful dialogues and such esteemed speakers over yesterday and today. And tomorrow, I think we will be looking forward to very insightful dialogues. And on behalf of Nuvama, I want to thank Manoj, IGF, and Honorable Goel sir. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Aswin.
Thank you,
Very
Minister.
nice talking.
Thank you so much. There is not much else for me to say. Piyush Goyal, thank you so much, and it's a wonderful conversation. I know everyone is keen to get to the real crux of tonight, which of course is the networking and dinner just next door. Just to say thank you from me for this evening. The IGF Leaders Dinner Reception will get underway. That's been made possible by Hero FinCorp and Dream Set Go. Thanks in particular to Abhimanyu and to Manish. So thank you so much for that. Please enjoy the evening. Look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow. Have a great one. Thank you.